I think as women and as people located in the United States, we're also at a very interesting time in our history. There's never been more opportunities for women in the United States. There's also potentially never been more challenges to be aware of. All of you have women in your personal circles and in society that you can look up to and admire and hold out as beacons of success and what possibilities are for you. But we also get up every day and we hear and we see that maybe our seat at the table isn't guaranteed and that maybe that there's still some work to do. And I think that's where MIT Sloan comes into the picture. And rather than talk to you more about why I think MIT Sloan would be a great place for some of you to come and help transform yourselves into leaders for these big challenges and take on these big opportunities, I'd like instead to turn the program over to Jen Barba, who's our Associate Director of Admissions, because a lot of the women that you're going to hear from tonight are going to show you how this transformation is possible and what the role that MIT can play in helping you to develop yourselves as significant leaders and change makers for the next generation. So Jen, come on up, and I'll turn it over to Jen.
Welcome, ladies. It's so exciting to see such a full audience tonight. This is my third women's event of the week. On Monday night, I was in New York. We had about 250 ladies there. On Tuesday night, I was in Washington, D.C. We had around 130 ladies there. And tonight, we're not only joined by everyone here in the audience, but also we have a virtual audience joining us that I think tallies around just over 400 women from over the world who's joining us remotely. So it's really exciting to be here. As Maura said, our goal tonight is to share with you all about how an MBA at MIT Sloan, no matter which path of an MBA you choose, can help you impact the world with your future career. So to kick us off tonight, we have a TED-like talk speaker, one of our 2015 MBA alums. Her name is Devin Cook. I'm going to give you a quick background on Devin. Devin's the executive producer of the Inclusive Innovation Challenge, or the IIC, which is a part of the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy. Devin was a Fulbright scholar in India, where she examined entrepreneurship as a driver for economic development for textile artisans, and she is a jurist for the Index Award, which is the world's largest design prize. Devin completed her undergraduate studies at Middlebury and her MBA from MIT Sloan in 2015. So I'd like to turn it over to Devin. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So 2 weeks into my experience at Sloan, I was sure I had made a huge mistake. I was sitting in a dimly lit classroom with all my newfound friends and fellow classmates when our econ professor asked us a simple question. By a show of hands, how many of you have come from a STEM background? Science, technology, engineering, and math. And about, it felt like anyway, 80% of the hands in the room went up. And my hand was definitely not one of them. As Jen said, I went to Middlebury College, which is a liberal arts school. No one forced me to take a math class, so I didn't. No one forced me to take a science class, so I didn't. And I was perfectly happy with that. And perhaps the bigger problem was that I really didn't like technology. Somehow I neglected to realize that technology is embedded into the name of this school. And that fact seemed to escape my attention during the admissions process. But I didn't come to MIT Sloan because of technology or my STEM background. I came here for two reasons. One was I had a deep interest in entrepreneurship as an economic development driver. And two, because I saw throughout that admissions process that this desire to make the world a better place is truly embedded into the ethos and DNA of this school, both Sloan and MIT at large. And so I settled in, I looked around at all my brilliant classmates, I said, I'm going to make the most of this. And of course, within even less than 2 weeks, I knew that I had not made a mistake because I really dove headfirst into learning as much about entrepreneurship as I possibly could. So I was very fortunate to work with some incredible faculty members. I ended up being the TA in MIT's flagship entrepreneurship class, New Enterprises, with Bill Aulette, who's a fantastic character. If you end up here, you definitely will meet him. I was a research assistant with Scott Stern on entrepreneurial strategy, and perhaps the most exciting opportunity, which really brought together those passions of entrepreneurship and economic development, was that I worked as a research assistant on the Regional Entrepreneurship Acceleration Program, which is also led by Bill Scott Stern and Fiona Murray, who is the leader of the MIT Innovation Initiative. So I was steeped in entrepreneurship and really had an opportunity to see how entrepreneurship can make a real difference in the lives of people, particularly from an economic development perspective. And while I was here, despite my best efforts perhaps, this interest in technology did start to seep into my bones. This school really is like a Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of technology. Behind every door, in every lab, there is a researcher or a scientist who is coming up with the next transformative technology. Whether it's nanoparticles that are going to be embedded into fabrics, or it is a prosthetic robotic arm. And all those new innovations are just ripe for finding that entrepreneurial drive from students in this room and at MIT Sloan and beyond that can really bring it into the market and have that transformative change in the world. So slowly I was becoming more convinced that maybe technology wasn't such a bad thing after all. And so as graduation neared and loomed, and everyone was asking that ubiquitous question, what are you going to do after graduation? I had an answer. And that answer was, I'm moving to Maine, which is not an answer that most of the other Sloanies in the room would have heard very often. It was the best thing for me and my family, and we were moving up there. And I had no idea what I was going to do with an MBA up in rural Maine. But lo and behold, an opportunity essentially fell into my lap. Because of all the work that I'd done with faculty members, my name came up when there was a discussion at the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy, like Jen mentioned, to create a new initiative. And that initiative would become the Inclusive Innovation Challenge. So basically, very briefly, the Initiative on the Digital Economy, or IDE, is led by Professor Eric Green-Olson and Andy McAfee. And they wrote a very popular book called The Second Machine Age, where basically they explored the progress and prosperity that digital technology has driven. But at the same time, recognizing that there are millions of people around the world who are not experiencing that progress personally and really are not experiencing that prosperity. People are being left behind. So I was presented with this opportunity to start up, my own startup essentially, this new initiative, which would be a $1 million awards program to support entrepreneurs from around the world that are using digital technology to transform the future of work and make sure that we're creating more shared prosperity in the digital age. So from rural Maine, I am a digitally enabled worker, and I'm able to run this new program at MIT. And this was the really opportunity of a lifetime because it enabled me to marry these two passions that I came to MIT with, entrepreneurship as a vehicle for economic development. But after we announced what we were doing publicly in October of 2015, which in itself was an amazing experience because Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Alphabet and Google, was there to help us with the announcement. All of that excitement started to simmer down and wear off, and reality set in, and that old familiar feeling from when I first started at Sloan came back, and I felt totally out of my element. I had never done anything like this before, but if there was one thing that I had learned at Sloan, it was the confidence and the skills to get things done. And so with rabid enthusiasm, my team and I settled into planning the Inclusive Innovation Challenge. And we essentially scoured the globe for inclusive innovators. And these are really entrepreneurial organizations that are using technology to reinvent the future of work and create more shared prosperity in the digital age. Really solving problems with technology that include how do we prepare people for the jobs of the future? How do we match them with those opportunities? How do we ensure that there's more financial inclusion and technology access in places where it typically doesn't exist? And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, how do we create more jobs and increase people's
Hey, Zach, I'm
driving back towards that
monitoring on the media site link that I got sent, and I don't hear anything. I just want to make sure everything's okay.
We worked with various offices at Sloan and at MIT to do outreach. We worked with global foundation partners to get the word out. And much like if you're throwing a party and it starts at 8 and it's 7:59, you wonder if anyone's going to show up. We were really nervous that no one would show up. But luckily, as that deadline started to loom, we ended up in the first year with almost 300 applications and have about the same in this year. We recruited in these last 2 years over 230 judges to help us with these reviews. We've assembled an incredible champion committee to help us select our grand prize winners, people like the former Deputy Secretary of the Department of Labor, the CEO of the UN Foundation, the director of the McKinsey Global Institute, all people that are equally passionate about the future of work and using technology to really transform it in a meaningful way. This experience was incredible for me, but what really brought it all home and really underscored for me the importance of my experience here at Sloan was the day that we brought all 24 of our winners last year to the MIT Media Lab for a big celebration event. So there are all these people that were coming in from literally every corner of the world. We got applications from over 50 countries, and so we had a strong global representation, just like we see in all aspects of MIT Sloan. And having those people in the room who I really felt were already friends since I got to know them so well, made me realize that we had this convening power to bring people together and make true impact and change. And the other piece that was exciting was to see just how many of those founders had an MIT background themselves. So we had some incredible organizations. One founder, Ella, who has the company Soko, who makes jewelry like I'm wearing tonight, just in case you're interested, made by artisans in Kenya, using a proprietary digital platform where people can access supply chains, so there's more transparency. Another MIT grad that had one of our winning companies, Augusto, from Destacame. They help small, medium-sized enterprises in Latin America gain access to credit. There's a range of really fascinating organizations doing incredible work. So watching all those people come together and giving them awards, handing out, we literally had the giant checks, we handed out trophies, but watching them interact with each other and see that we had created this community of people that were learning from one another and creating new opportunities together was perhaps the most rewarding experience of my career. And standing on that stage that night, I think the fact that we were able to support these entrepreneurs, which is what I came to Sloan to really do, was incredibly gratifying. But looking out in the audience, as I handed off the trophies, I realized that there was actually a much broader, kind of more macro level outcome of the work that we were doing. And I was perhaps the most ironic person to be doing that work, which was really being an evangelist for the positive power of technology. Because this was a group of people that were using technology to make a real positive impact in the world. But right now, I think as we heard from more earlier on, we're at a real inflection point where many people, like probably many of us in the room, are really benefiting from digital technology in powerful ways and in more mundane ways, right? But we use it every day. There are millions of people out there that don't experience technology in that same positive way. And so by showing these examples of people that are doing really amazing work with technology, we're showing that the future of work can be bright. The robots are not going to take everyone's jobs, but we can show that investment in technology is as important as continuing to have a real global outlook on the world. And so that role perhaps was an unusual one for someone like me to be in, but I think that speaks completely to the power of Sloan. Because I didn't come to Sloan to be comfortable, to have an experience just like my experience in my undergrad. Though I loved it, I came to be challenged. And being out of your element, being uncomfortable in those first couple weeks and even beyond is a good thing. Because that's when we do our best growing. And I certainly did. And I certainly came away being transformed. I will never be the first person in line for the newest edition of the iPhone, but I definitely can appreciate using technology as a tool. You don't have to love technology if you come to Sloan. You do not have to have a technology background. You can thrive and learn an incredible amount about yourself, about your classmates, and about the world. And really, that's what the power of an institution like Sloan and a really incredible education can do. And I certainly had that experience. Thanks.
Devin, thank you. That was amazing. Well, at this point, I'd like to invite all of our alums who are here tonight to come up and take a seat on the panel. As I mentioned earlier, we have representatives tonight of the different versions of the MBA that we have at MIT Sloan. So there are 3 different paths to an MBA that we offer here at Sloan. The Executive MBA, which is a be careful, they're high stools. We have the Executive MBA program, which is a program that meets about 30 times over the course of 20 months. It meets Friday, Saturdays, approximately every 3 weeks. We have the Sloan Fellows program, which is a full-time MBA program that lasts for 12 months. It's for mid to senior level executives. And then we also have the traditional 2-year MBA. So we have alums on the panel who represent all the different paths to the MBA here at MIT Sloan. So first, I'd like to ask everybody to introduce themselves. If you could tell us what you did before coming to MIT, and then what you're doing now, and also let us know what program you graduated from. Maybe Karen, we can start with you.
Sure. My name is Karen-Leigh, and I was part of the EMBA program, and I graduated in 2015. And prior to Sloan, I worked at Bajaj. I'm a chemist by training, but before I came to Sloan, I was working in our global operations department. And then throughout Sloan, I continued to be at Bajaj. Last year, I transitioned to another company, Alexion Pharmaceuticals, where I do CMC strategy. And so I continue in my quest post-Sloan.
Thanks. Kelsey?
My name is Kelsey McRichards. I'm a 2010 2-year MBA program graduate. And prior to Sloan, I was a pre-med. And with all of my hospital volunteer experience and applying to med schools, I kept focusing on, man, hospitals aren't run so well, and maybe as a physician I can help run them better, and just kept saying a lot of operational type of comments like that luckily had some good mentors along the way that helped me realize that what I was really after was a career in operations and not in medical care. And so I was very fortunate that I made that discovery in the middle of med school interviews and not after I made any acceptances. So I quickly rerouted and applied to business school, and so used my time here at Sloan to really focus on operations and strategy. When I graduated, I spent 5 years doing just that at Mass General Hospital, and I spent the last 2.5 years doing more operations at Boston Medical Center.
I'm Ann Haynes. I'm a Sloan Fellows from 2013. We're about to get to our 5-year reunion, which I'm super excited about. Before coming here, I was working in economic development in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm an architect by training, but working in real estate and economic development for a small city, and helped get Alexion back to downtown New Haven. So that was a big deal. I started a nonprofit in New Haven. I had always been fairly entrepreneurial, even though I was working sort of close to city government. I came to Sloan to really change the way I knew how to do urban development, but ultimately expose myself to a lot of business practices and get a really strong financial footing. I have since joined state government, which is actually none of any of that. It's like the least innovative place, but trying to make it more innovative. And I've basically built a startup within state government that does economic development strategy for small cities in Massachusetts.
I'm Kerry Weinberg. I graduated last year from LGO. I'm also an MIT undergrad graduate, so if there are MIT undergrads in the audience that want to talk about that experience, I can talk about that later. Prior to LGO, I worked as an engineer at Beckman Coulter. It's a life science instrumentation company. And then post-LGO, I joined the company that I did my internship at, Amgen, where I'm actually based in Cambridge here within operations.
Hema?
Hi, I'm Hema, and I am an MBA 2015 with Devin. Prior to Sloan, I was at Nickelodeon doing marketing and digital analytics. Loved every minute of it, but realized that I was plateauing and really only marketing to 8 to 12-year-olds. And it was probably time for a change. Devin mentioned this. MIT was completely transformative, and now all of my essays to Sloan were about using media for change, and that's exactly what I get to do every day. So I'm at Google now building strategy on how we build out our vocational efforts on the future of work and ensure that as such a big technology company that we are doing what's necessary to put into place the skill building resources for folks who are going to probably be losing their jobs due to automation.
I'm Devin. Hi. So my first stint after college, I worked in consulting, and sort of similar to Hema, felt like I had an incredibly valuable experience, but decided that I wanted to follow my gut and my passions. So did a Fulbright scholarship in India, again studying textile artisans and entrepreneurship, and then came back to Boston and worked at 2 different apparel startups here in the Boston area, one of which was started by some MIT students before making my way here to Sloan.
Great, thanks. All right, so obviously we're here tonight to talk about women's initiatives and what it's like to be a woman at MIT Sloan. So I'd like to start out by sharing some impressive statistics. So here at MIT Sloan, over the past 5 years, the percentage of women in all 3 versions of our MBA classes have steadily been increasing. This coming year, or this incoming class starting in about 3 weeks for the 2-year full-time MBA, we hope to be well over 40% women in the class. For the executive MBA, we're hoping to be about 37% women in the class, and for the Sloan Fellows program, which started in June, we're about 33%, or a third of the class. Some other research has been done over the past year, and I'd like to share that as well. So, we did some research looking at the past 15 years of graduating MBA GPA outcomes and found that there was no difference in gender outcomes with GPAs of graduates over the past 15 years. There's no difference in the past 6 years of starting salaries for women who graduate with an MBA. In monitoring core class participation over the past 2 years, there was no difference in gender outcomes in terms of class participation. And we continue to work to increase the percentage of female faculty members here at MIT Sloan. We're currently about 30% women faculty members here at MIT Sloan. So my question for the panel is, can you tell me about your experience here as a woman at MIT Sloan? Anyone can jump in.
Okay, I'll kick off. So my personal experience is that I felt no difference between myself and the male members. And we were few women in our class. I think if we were 30, we were many. So, and we were a class of 115. But I have to say, we always, and I feel very comfortable speaking for every woman in the class, we felt equal. In fact, a lot of the guys, they were in awe of us, and they really listened to what we had to contribute. So that was very nice. I come from a very male-dominated world. I've always been oftentimes the only female. So I'm pretty used to like fighting my way through and being up there. But it was just so nice just not to have to do that, just to be an equal. And in my class, we were very, very close, and we continue to be. We're amazingly in contact with each other every single day, and we help each other every day. And that was an incredible experience.
Would anyone like to add anything about women's related initiatives that you were involved in here at Sloan?
I'll just add that from the experience of being a woman here, I agree that I wasn't aware of being a woman at Sloan. You're just a student at Sloan, so I agree there's no distinction. But the one thing that I felt like kind of stood out to me was just the collaborative nature of it. And so Sloan is an incredibly collaborative place to begin with, but I had been in work environments where there was some competition, especially between women, that I always found odd, and there wasn't even a hint of that in my Sloan experience. It was just, like you said, everyone, you make incredible friendships, you support each other, it's very collaborative, and that was really unique and special.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about faculty here at MIT. So my question for the panel is, can you talk about a favorite faculty member, possibly a relationship you build in terms of a mentor experience? It doesn't have to be female. Favorite class, favorite faculty member, great experience.
I'll start. I don't know if you guys have heard of Zainab Tan, but she's a professor here. She focuses on operations. I took her class management of services. So from an academic, professional standpoint, tremendous professor, knows her stuff inside and out, has written a couple books, teaches operations in a way that's extremely digestible. So there was that side of it. But my favorite side of it was that she made business human. And I think that's really sometimes tough to do. You're reading case studies, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of stats, and oftentimes we try and bucket it in black and white. She made it very clear that there's a human side to business. You are hiring people. They have, they need to make ends meet. And that side of it, that lens of it was so refreshing. So I think there was that piece that really drew me to her class and the way she taught. And then there was also I didn't even know this. My parents told me this as graduation was approaching, but she had sent them an email just to say how great it was to have me in the class, and something that they still talk about to this day. And so things like that were she didn't even mention it to me, right? And so it's that type of relationship building that you'll see is so just very much a part of Sloan's DNA, where professors have open door policies. You're not just in their class as a student. It's you're continuing that dialogue. You have questions, you can go to their office hours. You can probably go outside of their office hours. I mean, that part of it was so amazing for me.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to this one too. So for my summer internship between my 2 years at Sloan, I interned at Massachusetts General Hospital, and I was asked to take a look at this clinic where they were having some operational challenges. And they said, oh, it's a long wait time. Maybe you can give them like gift cards if they have to wait a long time, or discount their parking. And I was like, okay, or maybe we can try and fix the wait time. I don't know, maybe that's ambitious, but why not? So I looked at it, and actually as I was seeing what was going on in the clinic, it was very reminiscent to a case study that we had done in my operations course the semester before. And so I did the modeling, I did the math, and then I went back to the professor because I was really worried I did bad math and I didn't want to give them the wrong answer and make it worse. So I said, please, can you check this to make sure that my recommendations are sound? And then he agreed that the situation we were looking at was very similar to the case that I had in mind, but that case was from the 1970s, and it was about cranberries, which maybe are not as exciting as healthcare in this day and age. So he did help me with. I know we're home to Ocean Spray, so maybe I shouldn't say that in this audience. But cranberries are great, but so is healthcare. So, and he, in addition to helping me through that summer, he said, you know, why don't we write this up as a case too? And I kind of like rolled my eyes. I'm like, well, that sounds like extra work. But he was able to motivate me. So we worked on it together. We pulled in another professor who had a lot of expertise in this area. And over the course of the year, we managed to get it written. And then after that, he's like, you know, I'm really proud of this. I think that we should submit it to the International Case Writing Competition. I was like, well, that now even sounds like even more work. But he kept pushing me, and we submitted and actually won. So thank you. It was one of those experiences, though, where so much of that was driven by the faculty member that just kept pushing me, and I'm just internally grateful for those opportunities. And the case is somewhat expiring in terms of what it's been able to do for my career at this point, but within the 2-3 years that I wrote it, it actually really, I ended up visiting a lot of other business schools that were teaching it, and through that met a lot of other people in the field, and it just kind of blossomed in terms of what it did for my career. So incredible mentorship and advice from 2 faculty here.
I just wanted to mention one thing. One thing that I've been really surprised about is the accessibility of faculty after you graduate. I think there's been a benefit for me being in the Boston area, but even my classmates. And even during the year we were in Sloan, which is a really short year for Sloan Fellows, you try and get access to certain faculty members, and the more grounded of a request that you have, not just, hey, I want to do whatever you're doing, but really specific requests on things that you're working on that may align with what they're working on. Very accessible, but even afterwards. And I think the number of times classmates that have come back because they're working on a project and spend time with some of the faculty members, even if they only had, you know, a 3-week class with that person, they're still very accessible. And I think that's kind of a huge benefit to MIT. It's sort of a lifelong, you pay for 1 year, or you pay for 2 years, but you're really part of the institution for a long time.
I would just add something. As an undergrad alum, I stayed in contact with professors I met during that time, and one actually became my thesis advisor when I came to LGO, and actually initiated an interview that I had at a startup. Made like tons of connections for me. Actually, one of the professors we collaborate with as an organization, Amgen, I see her come in all the time. So I think that I just wanted to throw that in as like an across MIT thing, that the professors are incredibly, and the real world problems are what motivates MIT.
Yeah, exactly.
So they do want to be involved. They're not just sitting in an ivory tower doing problem, you know, solving problems to solve problems. They actually want to solve problems that impact people.
That's a perfect segue to the next question. So the next topic I'd like to bring up is the opportunity students have here at Sloan to collaborate across the institute, get involved in initiatives, centers, competitions, take classes. There's no shortage of opportunities to get involved with outside of class. Could someone here, or several of you here, talk about activities you were involved with, whether it be here at Sloan or across campus, conferences, clubs, trips or treks that you took?
I can speak speak to that. So I was in a class that you had to apply for because it was very cross-disciplinary, but at the Media Lab, which is sort of like the center of cool on MIT campus, I think. It just looks cool. The people all look cool. I don't know. It's just it's worth just walking around there if you have a chance. But the course was all focused on reinventing retail. And so it was very cross-disciplinary and actually engaged students from across MIT's campus, but also a couple students from Wellesley and Brandeis as well. So there was a huge spread of ages, different backgrounds, whether engineering, business, computer science, et cetera. And we worked very collaboratively together in small teams, also completely based on this real-world experience and real-world problem that a corporation in Turkey was having. So we worked to figure out a solution for them to basically reinvent their retail stores, which were experiencing declining sales, and figure out the best way to enable people to engage with the product. And so getting to work with young students that could do things that I had no idea how to do and kind of be the voice of reason when it came to the business models that we were trying to propose was an immensely valuable experience. I think what brought it all together was at the end, we all traveled together to Turkey and present our ideas, present our proposals to executives at the company. And the development of the ideas on their own was an exciting piece of the course, but actually coming together as a team in a different place, kind of knowing how to anticipate the cultural differences, working together to prepare, made the entire experience not only educational, but we all bonded incredibly well and learned a lot from this incredible travel experience, as well as the education, and getting to hang out at the Media Lab was fun.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
While I was at Sloan, I became involved. MIT has an outreach program for high school students, trying to bring STEM to them, and they are primarily from underserved and underrepresented areas in the U.S. And so I got very heavily involved in this program because one of my classmates, actually, she was the director of the program at the time. And since graduation, I have become involved in a similar enterprise started by the same professor who started the outreach, Professor Cardinal Ward. He's a professor at MIT. He's from the Caribbean, as am I. And so when I heard of this other program that he runs for Caribbean students, I thought I should be involved in this because this is my turn to give back to my people. That's how I phrased it. So right now I'm involved. It's a very small group, and basically they're scientists. And so I feel very empowered bringing my Sloan learning to this small group because they're just interested in holding, the science workshops and guiding the students. But I say, well, this is a nonprofit. We really need to run this appropriately. We need to get feedback. So I've taken many lessons I've learned from Sloan, and I'm bringing that back. And it's very rewarding. It's a lot of work, but it's extremely rewarding because a lot of these kids are so talented. They're the brightest of the bright, but they think that there's nothing out there for them. So we help bring the world to them.
Great. Kerry, did you have?
Oh, yeah. So for LGO, you're basically trekking all over campus. You're at both main MIT and Sloan. You get a lot of steps. Pro. But also, I mean, you get to be in, I was in my engineering classes, I was in all of the first year PhD classes. So for bioengineering, MIT doesn't have a terminal master's program. The only terminal master's offered is through LGO. And so I was like the oldest person in the classroom regularly. Actually, one of the classes, the professor was my undergrad advisor, and he used to call on me if no one participated, because actually in a lot of the engineering classes, people won't participate. Opposite in Sloan. Yeah. So then they call on me, and he's like, Kerry, do you remember this? I'm like, dude, that was in 2008. Like, I don't remember that, So, but, that was a really unique experience to be able to go into an engineering class, and they give you a problem, and they're saying, like, come up with how would you propose this as a company? And the first year PhDs, they don't have a lot of that experience. You can bring a lot of value to that. And then on the Sloan side, you'd be in discussions around a potential technology application, and if you're somebody who's in technology and you're an individual contributor, then you can say, that might not work, or actually I think there's a patent for that. So I really enjoyed those opportunities to be in those multidisciplinary classes. And the remarkable thing about MIT is most courses are cross-listed across numerous departments. So I took a number of courses that were offered in course 10 is chemical engineering, course 20 is bioengineering, and then HST, health sciences and technology, co-listed with Sloan. And you get people that are like MBAs, Sloanies that are, they were doctors previously. You get people that are in their PhD program, postdocs, you get undergrads, you get everybody. It's just an amazing experience. And I think that's the sort of wonderful thing about MIT is it's so cross-disciplinary, not even in Sloan, but across the entire institute.
And I will just mention that even though there's so much to do at MIT, you couldn't possibly fit it in like 100 years, there are opportunities to take classes where there isn't such a department or a class that you want to take at MIT. I took a couple of courses at Kennedy, because of course, public service. And it was really great because a group of us from MIT took courses over there together. And really, it was actually a bonding experience, even for the MIT students, to sort of be in this other environment. And I think it's helpful because that cross-disciplinary approach works both ways. So it's good.
So another thing that really differentiates the experience here at MIT Sloan is this idea of action learning or experiential learning. In fact, the founding principle of MIT is in Latin, mens et manus, or translated, mind and hand. We truly believe that everything we do here at MIT, we will first teach you the fundamental skills of how to do it and then give you the opportunity to put that into practice. At Sloan, we have a number of these action learning classes that take that practice component kind of to an ultra level, where we're sending students off-site for extended periods of time to work as a team of consultants to solve a real live problem at a live company. So my question for the panelists, can you talk about any of the action learning experiences, lab classes that you participated in while you were here?
I can go. So I took a class called India Lab. I'm Indian. My parents are from India. And I actually took it because my entire experience with India prior to Sloan was based on my visiting family there. That was the extent of and maybe a few tours here and there of different parts of India. But I had very little sense, besides of what I had read online, about the business side of things. And so taking India Lab and really getting a sense of what business looks like, but then going there with about 16 of our classmates, they got to celebrate Holi, which is the celebration of welcoming of spring, with my grandparents. So that was like number one, extremely cool. Talk about worlds colliding. That was unbelievable. But two, also getting to experience how businesses are run on the ground. So we were working with a nonprofit there in Bombay, and it was predominantly female-run nonprofit too. So there were so many dynamics at play that I got to experience firsthand. We got to visit factories deep within rural India to see how factories are run there, and the entire project was about educating factory workers about the negatives of smoking, not only physically, like the physical harm that comes from it, but also on the factory floor. So just seeing how this nonprofit was run predominantly by women, the business world within India, and that was a lot of what was done in the classroom at Sloan before we even got to India, but then also seeing how the factory workers thought and what type of training should be implemented so that it could actually sink in why this thing that they're very addicted to is actually very harmful. So all of those dynamics coming into play, and then of course Sloanies celebrating Holi, that piece of it, were really, really amazing.
So I took a class called Global Health Lab, where at MIT there's something called January term, where there's no classes. You have this month to do something really neat. So we took that month and were paired with a company or a hospital in South Africa, 3 hours outside of Johannesburg, super rural. And the way that hospitals are funded in South Africa is by province, and the government looks at how many people are in your province and then gives the hospital an amount of money to take care of those people. And the hospital that asked for our help was right on the border, and they had a really good hospital, and the neighboring province had not such a great hospital. And so people were crossing the border, and they couldn't turn them away. And so they were trying to make this case to the government that we need more funding, and had no idea how to do that. And in the meantime, their supplies were at critical shortages, their staffing was at critical shortages, and they were really, their great care was starting to slip because of this. And so it was so neat to go to this like place in Africa that I would be frightened to probably go to under any other terms except like under the header of MIT Sloan and with the support of the school and the formality of this program. And I really felt like we were able to show them just basic things about how to track their numbers in a way that they could actually show what they were doing every day and make their case. And we learned a couple cool things too about how they start every day by singing to the patients. Tried to bring that one back to Mass General, didn't fly. But, you know, but I mean, in terms of a multicultural experience, I mean, it was just mind-opening for me. And I couldn't believe that I actually got course credit for it. Really phenomenal.
This is just briefly, we actually created our own in the Sloan Fellows program. We had two colleagues of mine were from the Netherlands. One was American but lived in the Netherlands, and did essentially a mini reel with the reel program with Fiona Murray. We created our own structure of a consulting project for economic development strategy for Amsterdam in terms of entrepreneurship. And it was a really good chance to also work with the faculty and the leadership of the program to sort of create our own action lab. And I think that's also the kind of place MIT is.
Great. All right, so certainly careers are on the top of minds when you're thinking about going to get an MBA. And I have a couple data points I'd like to share, then I'll ask a question about careers to our panel. So we did some analysis recently looking at the top employers of female alums, and this is looking at about 2,200 female alums from MIT Sloan and where they're currently employed today. Number one employer is McKinsey, number two is Google, 3, Amazon, 4, self-employed, 5 is a tie, Microsoft, Citigroup, and Deloitte Consulting, 6, Goldman Sachs, 7, also a tie, Boston Consulting Group and IBM, 8, Fidelity and Morgan Stanley, 9, Bain & Company and Analysis Group, and 10, Facebook and Oracle. So clearly, our female alums are doing very well. Right, question for the panel is, can you talk about how your experience here at MIT Sloan has helped you to grow in your career? Transitions that you made, support that you had during your experience.
Okay, I'll go. So one of the drivers for me coming to Sloan was I was at that stage of my career where I was wondering what's next for me. I had already made a big transition a few years back when I decided to leave a pure scientific track and go into a more operational track. And then I decided, okay, what is it I'm doing today that I could build on and get better? And I had built a name for myself within my company for being sort of the person you can go to when there's a problem. I would troubleshoot it and I would solve it very fast, often with terrible timelines and conditions that I couldn't often fit because they were set in stone. So it was a matter of taking the data that exists and trying to make it into something good and profitable that can turn it around. And it got me thinking, why must we always be fighting fires? There must be a way to prevent this from happening. And that's from the planning, the strategy behind it. So I came to Sloan to build the framework and to learn and understand, because I always need to understand everything before I can execute well. So I wanted that background to layer on top of all of my technical expertise so I could go out there and really speak knowledgeably and sell the strategy before the problems happened. And I've been able to make that transition into my current role at the moment, where I was lucky. The company, they were growing very quickly, and they recognized very early. It's not often a company recognizes this need. So they recognized that they wanted to build this sort of strategy into their operations because they were experiencing so many problems. So it's been a very good segue for me into the operational strategy, and I hope to grow that one day to encompass the corporate strategy, the overall, be the driver of where a company should go.
For me, I think I'm in a unique position since I now work at Sloan. I thought I would go out into the world and make a difference, but I've stayed in the world I created for myself here. But I think that, number one, I remember very clearly what the dean said, Dean Schmidtlein, when we arrived and we were all sitting in the big hall at the Marriott, actually, across the street on our orientation week. And you may remember this too. Dean Schmidtlein said, the path that you took to get here is not necessarily the path you have to take while you're here or when you leave. And I have taken those words to heart. I explored a lot of different avenues while I was at Sloan, and I never would have expected that I would be in the kind of role that I'm in now that you all have already heard about. But regardless of what kind of career you take on after Sloan, the biggest thing that Sloan has helped me to learn in myself, I think, is confidence in my ability to take things on. And that transcends nonprofit, for-profit, whatever path you take. If you're doing it right when you get to Sloan, you are drinking from a fire hose from morning till night, from the moment you start to the moment you graduate. There's so many things to experience, and you don't want to miss a thing. So regardless of if you are, find the coursework easy or not, you are working hard. And I think, to an extent, I probably took on too much in my first couple of semesters. I think maybe I can relate. But as a result, by the time I graduated, I was like, throw whatever at me. I've got this. And that feeling, just to know, I've taken on way more than I could handle, and I swallowed it all. That gives you the confidence to really accomplish just about anything.
I think, more than anything, more than what job you end up. I mean, if you end up at one of those companies, awesome, or self-employed, even better. Yeah. So I think beyond that, it's the skills you gain. I think, to your point of just being able to navigate uncertainty, coming out and knowing, if I could do what I just did these 2 years, bring it on, give me anything, and I think I can handle it. I sometimes look back, even among the crazy that happens at Google when we're doing strategic planning and all eyes are on you and your work. Even then, it doesn't even compare to core semester at Sloan. So it really does.
Not to scare you.
Not to, no. It's a great. I think it's a great thing. I think it's more of those types of things. These overarching skills you gain, whether it's high level strategic thinking, it's forward thinking, it's being able to navigate different diverse opinions in a classroom, and being able to speak to why you believe what you believe and provide data behind that. And again, just navigating uncertainty. I think that's a huge lesson. So you kind of build the foundation here. So anything you face kind of in the outside world is, relatively speaking, easier.
And I think the exposure you get, I was, again, mid-career, and so at a certain point you think that you've actually gotten somewhere in your career and you actually know something, and to be all of a sudden back at the stage one where you're getting exposure across so many different disciplines, so many different industries, so many different skills that you're picking up from your classmates, as much as the faculty, that is a confidence booster. At first, it really is unsettling because you realize there's so much more to know, but it is something that you can really kind of face anything, and you get the craziest question in your professional career, and you kind of know that you have an entire network of people that are going to troubleshoot with you to figure it out, and that's pretty extraordinary.
Sloan also makes it okay to not know.
Yeah.
I think that is another thing where I feel okay in meetings now saying I don't understand that, or can you explain that? And I think even that, just being able to do that is awesome.
Yeah, one of my most both comforting and traumatizing moments at Sloan, I think, was in an econ recitation. Econ and I were not friends and will never be friends, but I remember sitting in a recitation with the TA who was so wonderful and explained everything as simply as possible, and on day one having to raise my hand and say, what is a derivative? Because that was the baseline information, and I had no idea what he was talking about. But he helped me, my fellow students helped me, and by the end, I basically get what a derivative is.
All right. Well, before we open it up and take questions from both our virtual audience and the audience in the room with us tonight, I'd like for each of our panelists to answer 2 questions. So one is, can you describe your Sloan experience in 1 word? What would it be? And then the second, what's a short piece of advice that you'd like to share with people who are in the audience tonight? So 1 word and a short piece of advice. Anybody can start.
Word is transformative. And piece of advice would be that these are, whatever program you end up doing, use it as a playground to really test things that you wouldn't otherwise. So for us, like for the MBAs, we have that summer in between that you really should do what you've been wanting to do, that itch that you've had, test it out. This is your time to do that. So that's my advice.
Great.
I'd say catalytic, because then it keeps going. So catalytic, and spend as much time as you can getting to know your classmates. It's all kinds of different occasions and social occasions and work occasions, everything.
My word would be passionate, and my advice would be to don't take yourself too seriously. This is the time to not worry about that. You know, there's a lot of really, really smart people here, and everyone, this is like the most nurturing environment that you'll be in. It's not competitive at all. You're not worrying about somebody perceiving you a certain way or affecting a promotion or anything like that. So I just don't worry about that.
I'm going to break the rules in 2 words if I can, to say endless possibilities. There really is. I mean, whatever you want your business school experience to be, you can do that at MIT Sloan. And I think my advice would be to make the most of it. Again, there is so much to do here, and I think you don't want to oversubscribe to the point where you're not enjoying it. But the 2 years, it goes by in two seconds. And I think from colleagues that were maybe like a little more choosy in the beginning, that kind of did the opposite, then kind of regret it. So you have to find that like perfect balance of getting into like just the right amount of stuff. But like again, the 2 years flies by, and so just jump in, enjoy it, and have a great time.
So I was going to say transformative, but now I'll say collaborative. Because even if you thought you operated collaboratively before, you don't understand the meaning of the word until you come here and you work with your classmates. And my advice to you is really understand your program. Being part of the EMBA program, it was extremely intense because we were working. So I really understood what I was getting into, because I wanted to give it my all. So I prepared my family and my friends. I said, I'm going off the grid for 20 months. You cannot expect anything from me. And I did go off the grid. I mean, I had to, of course, my commitments at work, and it was very intense at the time. And then open yourself to the experience. You might think you're introverted, you might think you're extroverted, but you will be exposed to so much more than you can imagine. And if you are not open to absorb it all, as Kelsey said, you could miss some really key moments. And you don't know how they're going to come to you. They often don't come to you in class. It's the get-togethers after class. It's the all night working on a project when you want to kill each other. And then somehow you have a kumbaya moment at 4 a.m. Those are the building blocks of lifelong friendships. And it's really true. It brings you together in a way you could never imagine. You have to really experience it to understand it.
It would be triumphant. I think there are moments of adversity, but when you come out on the other end with that diploma and your graduation cap and gown, you feel like you've really accomplished something. And I think my advice, maybe a little bit different. It's in the same vein of make the most of it, but it's to actually come in with an agenda, because there is just so much to absorb at MIT, and I think it's very easy to get pulled in 1,000 directions and then come out at the end and go, what just happened? And so like coming in with an agenda, for me, it was focus on entrepreneurship and also operations, ironically, and then throw out the agenda if it's not working for you. Like I kind of threw out operations, sorry. But I did continue to focus on entrepreneurship. And by having a little bit of tunnel vision or some blinders on, I was really able to have an incredibly deep and meaningful experience in those areas of interest that I have.
Thanks, that was great. Who has questions for our panelists? But in the back, yep. So I'm just going to repeat the question for our virtual friends. The question is about how you were able to develop friendships across cohorts, across the class, and how that continued to build during the 2 years or 1 year.
I can start. So in our class, we had people from all over the world. So actually, maybe a third or less of us were local. So many people flew in, and that was quite a commitment. It was every other week. They flew in. I think the person who won the prize came from Chile. He had 20 hours of travel, but we had somebody coming in from Saudi Arabia, and so really very far. So a lot of our work during the week when we left on Saturdays, we truly were global because we were put into teams and we had to work across many different time zones. And often, if you're in Eastern Standard Time, you might have to do a 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. to facilitate your classmates. And so we used digital technology to the fullest. And for our class, we started a WhatsApp. And we had it throughout school, and it's still active today. And every single day, because we travel a lot, somebody will say, I'm in Madrid tonight, anybody here? I'm in Abu Dhabi, and there is always somebody else there. So we actually see a lot of each other. For instance, one of our friends will come in from Germany this weekend, so some of us will get together. So we are always active every single day. We get stumped in our job, we throw out a question, anybody knows anything about this? And always somebody will answer or put us in contact with somebody else. So that has been really tremendous.
That's great. How about a question from our virtual audience?
All right. We have a question from Christine, and she wants to know, is there anything in particular about MIT that you were pleasantly surprised by and would like others to know?
Great question.
So I kind of touched on earlier how supportive and collaborative it is, but just to emphasize that a little further, because I really was shocked by this. So talking about setting an agenda, not getting distracted, I came in for hospital ops. I thankfully left doing hospital ops, but I also interviewed for consulting in the middle. And when I was doing that, it's actually a very challenging interview. It requires a lot of practice and preparation. And when we had a bit of a break between semesters, and in the basement of this building, that's where people came to practice. And the folks that were here on sponsorships from those consulting firms were also down here on their holiday vacation where they could be doing something fun or with their families, and were coaching those of us trying to join their firms just because they wanted to see us succeed and wanted to see more Sloanies be given offer letters to their companies. And that blew my mind. And then as other people started to feel really confident in their interviewing skills, they would then turn around and be like, I'm feeling good. Do you want me to give you a case? And it would just go back and forth. And that people did that like basically on their Christmas break. It still blows my mind that that is the culture that was here.
The phrase that's used very often is Sloanies helping Sloanies. And it's just part and parcel of I think the admissions process, like just who you recruit. I don't know if it's some Kool-Aid we drink on orientation, but like it's actually remarkable to see. There's so many examples. I think every single one of us probably has numerous stories where we were blown away by our fellow classmates because they drop everything to help you all the time before, after school. Like we have an entire Facebook group about, it's called Sloanies Helping Sloanies.
More questions? How about right here in the front row? So the question is about timing and trying to figure out when the best time to come back to get your MBA is.
So I think there's never a best time because there will always be something in your life. So I think it's when you feel ready. It is a commitment. If you want to do it well for me with my program, it was really a commitment because we had to work. I don't know how you had to completely give up a year. So it's some form of commitment. But so you really need to ask yourself the right questions. Why am I doing this? And what do I need? What do I want to get out of it? And I think by asking yourself those questions, you really start to understand. It is a sacrifice in a way. You are giving up a lot to get a lot. But make no bones about this. It's intense, and you really have to give your all and then some. You will not fully appreciate what you can do until you go through these programs. I look back now and I think, I can't believe I did that. I don't even know if I could do it again, to be honest.
I know I can't.
So I think it's not so much of it being a right time. It's, are you ready to do it and willing to do what it takes?
I would add, too, that I think there is some value in having some career experience behind you. And for me, like being able to bring real-world experience and being able to say, oh, when I worked with XYZ client, we had an experience kind of like that. And being able to relate to the challenges I was hearing about in class, for me, made all the difference, both to bring it to life, what I was hearing from professors, reading about in cases, but also to have constructive comments and input in coursework, casework, et cetera, to my fellow classmates. That was an important takeaway for me, that having some experience and background really enriched my experience at Sloan.
More questions? Yeah, how about right here?
Yes. That's such a great question.
The question is about how your experience here at MIT Sloan was able to train you to work with people who are very different from you, who also have different levels of motivation.
I'd love to take it. So one of the courses that you will take in your core is called Organizational Processes.
The most important course. You use it every day.
So I'm an operations person. I can do analytics all day long. I love numbers. I love modeling. And that's what I do in my job, but I will tell you that my job is 40% that and 60% operational processes, which is basically like people management judo. And one of like the fun things in my job is that once we do like the analytics and we figure out, okay, here's the solution to this problem, that's, again, only the first 40%, if not maybe the first 20%. And then you actually have to work with, in the hospitals especially, very large multidisciplinary teams and get it done. And I rely on that course so much. I admit that I have recycled most of my course packs at this point, but I still have that one because the things that you learn are so helpful. And some of the biggest like badges of pride that I have from my years in industry are where you have the solution and it starts, oh, we can't, that won't work because of this, we just can't do that. You don't understand how this works. We can't. And then, 3 months later, after it's all done, you're like, look what we did. We knew this was going to work right from the start. And that class and some other classes similar to it, I could not have done that before I came to Sloan, and now I think it's one of my trademarks as a professional, and it's because of that coursework.
I would like to add on to that. When we were doing the class, we had action learning, not just the weeks, but every weekend we were here, we had to go back and apply it in our jobs. And that course, at the time, I was working on an extremely difficult project. And I was a skeptic at the beginning of that class. And I just thought, no way. I mean, what is this psycho mumbo-jumbo we're learning? And I went back the first weekend and I tried it out. I could not believe it worked. And to Kelsey's point, every single day I use OP in my job. Every single day. It is life-changing.
Yeah. How about another question from the virtual audience? Yep.
Great. So Margot has a question. When you were considering applying for your MBA program, what was the personal tipping point that led you to Sloan specifically?
I'll go quick. I mean, I think for a mid-career program, and if you can take the year off, for me it was an ability to do something very concentrated for 1 year and really get the breadth of experience. I mean, it was June to June, and not like every single minute was occupied. It was the hardest year of my life, but I think it was no question. It had sort of the breadth of disciplines. It was global. It had people of a really broad set of ages. I mean, the average age, I believe, is in the mid-30s or late 30s, but it was really a broad set of people from different directions. So once you understood the DNA of the program, there's only one like it.
I think for me, so LGO has an ambassador day in the fall, and I mean, I was pretty confident I wanted to go because I loved MIT so much. You know, that was the strong driver, but I did apply to other schools. And when I went to Ambassador Day, I was like, these are my people. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, this is it. And so that, I think that really sealed the deal. I ended up applying to the other schools, and then even on the open house, the difference in the interaction I had with LGOs versus the other school I got into, it was like, no, these are my people. Super grounded. They know what they want to do. You know, technical, but they're interested in the business side. I just was like, that was exactly who I was looking for.
I always say that finding your program is like finding an SO, a significant other. My biggest advice to you is talk to alumni, talk to current students. If you can visit the campus, visit, because you'll know.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the programs, at least for MBA, end up sounding very similar online. They all use the catchphrases and the terms that we hear, but it's when you visit and you feel the culture, you realize that there's such thing as Sloanies helping Sloanies. If you thrive in environments that are collaborative, you're going to know what programs suit that. And that's what it was for me. Like, it was Sloan wasn't even on my list. When it became on my list, it very quickly went to the top of the list, because as soon as I started talking to people who were current students and alumni, I knew, like, to her point, like, I knew these are my people.
Add one other thing. So for me, it's a similar story that's like from a values perspective and from a cultural perspective, the people perspective. That was like, yes, I could be here, thrive here. These people are fantastic. But for me, picking a program that was different from my other academic experiences so that I would be challenged was really important. So, you know, I joked in my talk about how, like, technology, like this, but I knew going into this that this was a very quant-driven program. And I knew that I was going to need to really up my game. And so recognizing what it is that you're looking to get out of a program and making sure that it's going to challenge you in the right ways, I think is what's going to make the experience not just fun and enjoyable and make the best friends of your life, but also you get the value out of it that you're looking for.
Thanks. We have many opportunities for you to come and visit, sit in on classes, meet more current students. It's called the Ambassadors Program. You can check our website for dates. They run pretty much every single day. So please feel free to come visit on campus. So I want to be conscious of time, and I think now is kind of a good point to wrap things up. We have a number of other members of the Sloan community who are in the room with us tonight, so I'd like to take a minute to introduce those people, or have them introduce themselves, I should say, and then we'll point out kind of some logistics for networking after. So first I see Joanne Yates in the front up here. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other faculty members in the room? Okay, so again, we have Maura Herson, who's the director of the MBA program. We have Joe Heising DeFabio, who's the director of the executive MBA and the Sloan Fellows program. We have other friends, I think, in the back from the different degree programs. Maybe stand up for those of you who are from EMBA and Sloan, or EMBA, stand up. Sloan Fellows. Perfect. We have lots of people here from the admissions office. Anyone else I'm missing? Do we have any other alums in the room? Please introduce yourselves. Someone else in the back? Yep.
Hi, I'm Cornelia Wong. I actually was an MIT undergrad, and I'm actually currently a Sloan Fellow. My background is really in marketing strategy and consumer innovation.
Great. Right here. All right. Any others? Okay, so as we go outside, we have a table set up representing each of the different programs, Sloan Fellows, LGO, Executive MBA, Traditional MBA. So you can find representatives to talk about that. We've created our own little mini MBA fair outside. There's also food, so please stick around and mingle and chat with one another. And finally, we have a social media campaign happening this week. It's hashtag MIT Sloan Women. If you look it up on anything, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the different social media channels, check it out. We have lots of members of the Sloan community nominating one another for inspirational stories and reasons why other fellow women here at MIT Sloan and in the community have inspired them. So again, thank you for coming tonight, and please help me in thanking our amazing panel of alums for joining us. And we hope to see you at future events. We hope that this event has sparked your interest in learning more about Sloan, and I look forward to meeting you soon. Thanks so much.